sights, sounds, and information just for you from your friends at ASM.
Welcome to the turn of night.
That sneaking suspicion, the uneasy feeling of being watched. We've all been there. But this is more intense and far more real than any weird idea or simple case of nerves. This goes beyond anything I'd ever felt before. One Monday afternoon, I was contacted anonymously by a person who'd heard of my past record. That talent I have for breaking into places and subtly swiping the goods. I guess they didn't hear about the last job where I ended up in the joint. The year-long sentence got reduced to 6 months, and I was out in time to get a crummy job, a new jacket, a turkey, and a few bottles to get me through the holiday season. Figuring that this was seriously the dead end of this low-paying, law-abiding path, I began to contemplate my options. I'd at least hear them out, and attached to the message I'd received from a private courier told me that all I had to do was steal a book. Apparently, security was light, but they wanted an unaffiliated party to carry it out. How could I say no when the bottom line of this offer noted that there was $1.5 million in escrow as my payment, plus an extra 10 grand in cash up front for any expenses and, I assume, motivation. I jumped at it. The money would be set up in the guise of an inheritance to avoid suspicion. I already felt rich with the front money, as it would only take $100 to get to the location and back. Coincidentally, I'd also made my last check-in with my probation officer a week before, so this would go smooth. Taking a bus 2 towns over in the afternoon, I got a look at the building where this book was being held. From what I was told, it had supposed supernatural properties or some such nonsense, but this place looked like a glorified library. I sat at the diner on the corner and watched people walk in and out all day. Returning there for dinner as the sun went down, I watched as a man locked the door of the building and left. I paid my check and headed down the street to the alley nearby. Sure enough, the basement window was slightly open and large enough for me to fit through, with an old crate right beneath. This couldn't be any easier. Walking upstairs, I found that the doors were all unlocked as well. According to my employer, the book was being kept in a private library on the 2nd floor. That door was locked, but nothing a sliding bank card couldn't handle. The book itself was on a display, practically out in the open. I picked it up, and for a second I thought I felt dizzy. Must be the concentration or excitement of doing something I'm good at again. Placing it carefully in my backpack, I retraced my steps and exited the way I'd come in. It was getting close to 10 p.m., and I'd have a bus to catch to get back home. An hour-and-a-half bus ride and a 10-minute walk back to my place later, I hid the bag for good measure. Not before I'd opened it, of course. The book itself was creepy and I couldn't make out any of the words. There were illustrations that looked like something you'd see in a horror movie, including one of a giant eyeball. I don't see how this dusty old thing was worth what they were paying me, but what do I know? I fell asleep as I had to contact the client by noon the next day. It was uneasy and the dreams I had were bizarre, unsettling to say the least. I even saw that eye, only it wasn't the scribble like in the book, but huge and alive. I woke up feeling sick just after sunrise. I made the call at noon and was instructed to deliver it at 6 p.m. Taking a 20-minute taxi ride, I ended up in an old part of the city that I thought had long since been abandoned. Walking up to the door of yet another old building, I noticed the lights were on. Ushered in by a well-dressed attendant, I was guided to a large room. Sitting there behind a wooden desk, a man in probably his 70s welcomed me in. Handing over the book, I was assured that my payment would be handled before the month's end and that the $10,000 was to help see me through. I assured him it was fine and prepared to leave. He inspected the book and asked if I knew what it was. Replying matter-of-factly that I didn't care, he assured me that it was more powerful than any weapon on this earth. I nodded my head and politely got up and said goodbye. He wasn't impressed by my dismissive nature and said a few words in Latin that I couldn't understand. And then in English, he said, "You opened this book, and the last page you saw was..." A flash of light lit up the room and a loud oscillating sound like nothing I'd ever heard began to cut right through me. Blinking my eyes, I looked at the seated old man as he smiled. Behind him, the large eyeball hovered over his shoulder. It was at least 10 feet wide. He spoke again. "Just know what you're dealing with. In case you should attempt to take this book from us for a higher bidder." I ran out. His laughter echoed through the room. Before the month ended, I received my payment. The legal-looking papers that came with it have allowed me to live a financially comfortable life. I no longer worry about money and have a small house of my own. Even a better job than when I first got paroled. Still, at least once or twice a week, a nightmare of that hideous eye and threatening voices telling what will happen if I betray this knowledge have made my good fortune far less than it should be. Those evil bastards are watching me, or making me think I'm being watched. I must steal that book. My sanity is now at stake.
The lights are on as the evening shadows are creeping in. Hopefully, you won't get caught in the turn of night.